Steelworkers are one of the few unions that have been able to get the government to act on, well, steel and paper. I mean, that couldn't have been an easy job.
The industry was flat on its back. We managed to work our way through that by, quite frankly, building an alliance with the employers. And a number of the leaders of the steel industry in the union came together on a set of principles that we would go to Washington on. And we lobbied continuously for a year and a half. First of all, there probably wouldn't be a steel industry left in America if we hadn't done that. Secondly, we've been able to protect the attempt by a number of Washington politicians to weaken our trade laws. To go to Washington, and whether they're hearing from a local union president, or whether they're hearing from me, or whether they're hearing from John Goodish or Pat Hassey, they're hearing the same thing about trade laws, protecting manufacturing, protecting jobs, and protecting what is the best future our kids can ever have is a good industrial manufacturing job with the union there to help them. So we bring that message to Washington together and regularly, and we've been able to get them to do some things. But I could tell you this, in this environment, it is a constant battle. We have to be constantly vigilant, because the minute that we let down our guard, this crowd that's a bunch of free traders are prepared to give away our jobs. What I tell people everywhere, cheap goods have an expensive price. Cheap goods have an expensive price. We lose jobs, we lose standard of living, we lose a tax base, and now we're having to fight off the importation of toxic products. We're getting tires that are steel belted with no steel in them. We're getting auto parts that are made counterfeit. We're getting, I mean, I could go on forever, but that's the kind of stuff we have to do it. And quite frankly, I think that we've saved the steel industry by the industry and the union working together for the future and to make sure there's an industry here for our kids and grandkids.
Let me just give you some statistics. We're going to spend, our company is going to spend, right now we've committed $1 billion to new equipment, new manufacturing in the United States. We're building the first titanium facility that's been built in the world, in a new one, greenfield, in about 30 years, but more importantly, the first one in the United States in 60 years. 60 years. Now, what does titanium do? It's the frame for the new 787 aircraft for Boeing. It's jet engine parts. It's all the stuff that you talk about the Chinese. It's all the technology the Chinese would like to have to produce parts and ship them back to the U.S. It's investment. It's training of people, and we've got a good training program. It's safety of the American worker, and it's protection. I'll tell you the trite phrase that drives me crazy, and I'll probably get a lot of bad press on this because I'll point my finger anyway.
There you go.
When somebody says to you, you know, it's a global economy and it's global jobs and you've got to compete, and what's wrong with American industry? You guys need to compete. You guys need to get better at competition. No, that's really not the problem. Under the rules that we all compete against, companies cannot win against governments that are willing to spend 5 years targeting an industry with losses in their own, over capacity, bringing things in. The only way that private industry competes against that is with the government helping in terms of regulation. If American manufacturing and the middle class jobs are so unimportant to this economy, why does everybody else in the world want them? Because it's exactly what you've talked about tonight, what John you've talked about, what Leo you've talked about. So the answer that comes in the end is, for the materials, you don't want to be calling the Chinese if you want to build a missile or arm it. You don't want to be calling the Russians if you need titanium. You don't want to be calling somebody else outside the country when it's the time that you have to depend on your own resources.
Allegheny, Teledyne, and the steelworkers have been working Washington like crazy to try and prevent the Department of Defense from getting their titanium from Russia, while Allegheny Teledyne is wanting to build the first titanium plant in America in 60 years. That lacks common sense.
Well, common sense, it's almost traitorous.
Today, we're a 33 million ton company, and we've done that through consolidation. We've managed to reduce our manufacturing cost or our administrative cost that goes with it. We could not have done that without the United Steelworkers. The innovative agreements we've come up with and the downsizing has allowed us to do that. I started with U.S. Steel in 1970, and we were a 36 million ton company. And we went from 36 million tons down to 12 million tons. And slowly now, since 2000, we've clawed our way back to being a 33 million ton company again. With that, but we cannot continue to grow, and we cannot continue to create good paying jobs if we don't have adequate support of our trade laws. The other side of that is, and it should be a market for our manufacturing, but a lot of the products that they produce there, as you referred to before, have vast government subsidies, $52 billion going to the steel industry. I can tell you right now that United States Steel Corporation, Allegheny Technologies, any of us can be competitive with any company in the world. We have a problem competing with countries. We can do okay with companies. So the subsidies have to go away. It's our job as managers of a company, and frankly, as union leaders, to help manufacturing stay competitive in this country. We think we're doing a pretty damn good job of that.
Yeah.
It's government's job to make sure that we have a level playing field. They're not doing their job.
Sure, just keep it, yeah. Maybe what we can all do is when we go to those stores, say, could you show me, go to the manager and say, show me your Made in America section. We don't have one, say, oh, that's okay, I'll go somewhere else then. Eventually that'll filter out.
As far as the Steelworkers Union are concerned, not only will there be manufacturing jobs, but we're going to try to do what we're doing with U.S. Steel and with Allegheny Teledyne. We want to grow the manufacturing industry back. And let me just make one last point about that. I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. And this year, America will hit its 30th year in a row of record-breaking trade deficits. China is holding $1.2 trillion of American currency, treasury bills. If we continue the same trajectory as we've been on for the last 4 or 5 years, going forward 4 or 5 years, America will hit a $1 trillion per year trade deficit in a $15 trillion economy. You don't have to be real smart to figure out what happens after you've done that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in a row. We are at a tipping point, and I congratulate those companies that have joined with us to create the Alliance for American Manufacturing, because if there's any hope, we're it. The people in this room, we're it.
There you go.